Tell me when. Hi, welcome everyone. Welcome. We're just taking a few minutes so we can wait till some people get going here and get here. But thank you for joining us and thank you for being here for SID Washington's Career Fair. We're really excited to have you here today. This is the first session, as you probably all know. We are going all day today from 10 to 6, and we hope that you'll be able to stick around with us all day. This session, Breaking Through Barriers, Advancing Your Career in International Development, is the first session of the day. This will go on for an hour, and then we will have a little break. And then the exhibit hours will open on the Brazen platform, which I encourage you all to join us at the exhibitor hall online at 11:15. That will go on through 3:45, and then at 4 o'clock, we have another session on locally led development, which will also be a Zoom webinar. So we hope you can join that from 4 to 5. And then finally, at the end of the day, we will have a networking session from 5 to 6. And that will be on Zoom. It's going to be a great informal happy hour. We'll have a raffle, so we hope you'll stick around for that. So I think we will, can you go to the next slide, Malvika, please? All right, so I think you all should know a little bit about SID Washington. I am Julie Montgomery. I'm the VP of Membership and Partnerships at SID Washington. And as you probably know, we are a global network, so we're the SID Washington chapter, and we're the only chapter in the United States, but we're a part of a network from all around the world, which is the Society for International Development. Really, our mission is to bring together those working in international development or those wanting to work in international development to come learn, to convene. We convene them to learn, share, and connect with each other, and we hope that you'll be able to do that today. Next slide. Well, besides attending today's career fair, there are other events that we're having, as you all know. So I hope that you'll go to our website, sign up for our newsletter if you're not already on it, and follow us on social media. And then you'll get the latest news and updates on what's happening with SID Washington. Next slide. Okay, so as you know, we're recording the session, and we will be sharing this publicly through the network and our social media channels. You have the option for live transcription, closed captioning, so you can click on that. And as you can see, we have ASL interpretation today, thanks to Gallaudet, who has offered that and hosting that. So thank you. All right. We have a great panelist today, a panel of speakers. If you have questions for them, please post them in the Q&A box. Also note which speaker you'd like to answer your question. And given the time, we may not be able to answer all of them, but we'll try to do as many as we can. Next slide. And don't forget, at the end, we'll put this in the chat later at the end. But please, please, please fill out the survey at the end of the day. Really, we rely on your feedback to improve our future career fair and other events. All right, so now we get to our wonderful panel. I was talking to the panel yesterday, and we have over 60 years combined experience with this panel. So I'm not going to introduce all of them because I'm going to leave it to Scott. Scott Webb, who is from Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey, in Monterey, California. Is joining us. He's going to moderate. And, I asked him yesterday, you can get all his the bios online, but I asked him yesterday kind of what prompted him to get into international development. And he said that, when he was growing up, his father's a scientist. And he grew up around a lot of international students, postdoc students. And that really, kind of opened his world to international affairs. So he joined the Peace Corps. And he actually joined the Peace Corps, and he served with his wife, which is really interesting. He served in Peace Corps Niger, which at the time was one of the poorest countries in the world. But that has really shaped his career and his, kind of outlook on life. And, he's committed his entire life to international development. And, I want to ask him one question, which I did ask him yesterday, but I'm going to ask him directly now. So Scott, can you share one of your proudest moments in your career?
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, it's great to be here. I think one of the coolest things I got to do was when I was working for IRD. Now they're called Bluemont, but up in the 2010s, they were known as IRD, International Relief and Development, one of the most creative names in NGOs. Anyway, fall of 2011, we were working in Ethiopia because there was a really terrible drought in the Horn of Africa. You had Al-Shabaab pretty much at the height of some of the worst times in Somalia. And so there was, significant refugee flow outside of Somalia. And however, in southern Ethiopia along the border, there were Somali Ethiopians living in this region that had been hit really hard by a terrible drought. They'd received only, 50 millimeters of rain in 2 years in an area where they normally get up to 200 to 250 millimeters of rain a year. So they're pastoralists down there, and just the land wasn't able to support them. And so we went down to try and we did a rapid assessment of water needs in several villages in southern Ethiopia. They call them kebeles. So we went all around areas around Dolobai and Dolo Ado, and we assessed all these villages. And I got to see, it was just dire, incredibly dire, very, very drought ridden. The land was completely desiccated, trees were dying, and I was literally watching the water run out. Like, we would go to these villages and they would show us their wells or their water sources where like literally the last drops were right there. Like they couldn't even scrape it out of the ground. It was so bad. And so by the end of that couple of days, we were able to arrange water trucking that day. And it felt like one of the few times in my humanitarian career where there was like a direct link between, my work and literally helping people. Like I helped get people water. It felt like one of the most tangible things that I've ever done, because I've always been kind of a headquarters person. I have had some time in the field, but not really compared to many of my humanitarian colleagues that are out there for ages at a time. So that was a really cool experience to have that direct link. So yeah, that was probably one of the coolest moments that I've had in my humanitarian career.
That's really it's really incredible.
Thanks, Julie. Are we going to do the
so yeah, thanks, Scott, for sharing that. I mean, it really, those kind of moments where you see, like, kind of have the direct impact and you see firsthand is it's really cool. Especially, I'm a headquarters person, so when I hear, anytime I've been able to go into the field and work with communities, it's kind of inspired me to continue on, to be connected and inspired to continue on in this sector. All right, so I am actually now going to turn it over to you, Scott. And we're going to go into some polls. Scott will lead those because we want to learn about who's here with us today. Even though we can't see you, we want to know more about you. So Scott.
Yeah, this is great. So yeah, first of all, we want to know if you're an SID-W member, or are you a member of the Society for International Development? So click onto that one. And then where are you joining us from today? You can click it on the poll, or you're welcome to put it in the chat if you want. But please go ahead and vote. Looks like we have about 220 participants here. And I cannot see in the poll when it's close to a quorum. So whoever's monitoring the poll. Wow, that was fast. So a lot of you are not members, so you might want to consider becoming a member of SIDW. There's a lot of good benefits, in particular, a lot of the programs that they have for young professionals really connects you with the network of international development organizations. So I highly recommend that if you guys, are up for it. Where are you joining us from today? 44% within the DC metro area, 55% outside. This is a benefit of this virtual environment. It opens it up. I mean, if this had been 4 years ago, we would have probably been walking around some room in Washington, DC. So I know I probably wouldn't have been able to participate from Monterey. So this is great. This is good to know. So has everyone seen that? Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we have a second poll here. This will help us direct our conversation today. So what question is most important to you? And then which topic do you want to learn more about? So we've got a list of different things that we can talk about. You know, these are kind of the core questions we'd come up with for the poll. And then there's just other topics where, you know, maybe we can focus some of our attention. This is great. I'm kind of looking at the chat. People are from all over the place. Barcelona, Spain, happy to be here. I'm in Monterey. I'm actually in Pacific Grove, California, right next to Monterey, and the sun rose about 14 minutes ago. So good morning from the West Coast of the United States. Do we have results on the poll yet? Okay, let's see. What question's most important to you? Okay, so there's a lot about how does one grow professionally or find a job given remote work, limited in-person connections, and other restrictions caused by the pandemic. That makes sense since over 55% of you are not in DC and you're here virtually. Or I mean, you're all here virtually, but which topic do you want to learn more about? So the job search is a big one, professional development, networking, mentoring, education requirements. I'm sad that that's so low because I'm partly here to plug my school. Are there creative or non-traditional career paths in international development? So this is good. My panelists and I, you know, we can take this into account. So creative or non-traditional career paths, professional. Sorry, how can one grow professionally or find a job given remote work? I see. Okay, how do you network and get this thing done remotely? Okay, that's great. So I'm going to close the poll. So let's just get going. I'll tell you about myself a little bit. You've probably read my bio, but I'm a career and academic advisor with the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. I've been at the Middlebury Institute for 6.5 years now. I'm a Middlebury Institute alumni. I graduated from there with my MPA at the end of 2007. Then I spent about 7.5 years working in international development for 3 different NGOs. I was with IRD for 5 years, as I mentioned, and then I was a senior program officer at Relief International, and then I was a technical advisor at Catholic Relief Services. So I've been a recruiter a couple of times where I've hired I've hired around 100 people, you know, start to finish, from, you know, the job requisition to negotiating their salary. I've been a program officer where I've worked on operations, I've worked on proposals, auditing, everything that you would do in the course of being a program officer. Mostly I've been a headquarters-based person. My oldest daughter is autistic, and a field-based career wasn't really in the cards for our family. So I've always been based in the United States with like a lot of travel. Here at the Middlebury Institute, I advise students in the International Policy and Development, Master of Public Administration, and International Trade and Economic Diplomacy degrees. So I've been advising all 3 of these degrees the whole time I've been here. And I wanted to plug that we actually just renewed and redesigned our degrees. We're making them more affordable and shorter. So you can actually get a degree in International Policy and Development, or a Public Administration, or, you know, our trade degree. Each of these degrees is only 42 credits, and you can do it in as little as 12 months if you start in the fall, or around 16 to 17 months if you start in the spring. So you can start in either fall or spring. And you know, we've tweaked our tuition and scholarship amounts and things like that to make it more affordable. So if you're considering going to graduate school, you can, you know, there's lots of information, you know, here. Okay, so I'm really excited to be here. We've got some great panelists, but I just wanted to put it out there. Let's just start with the biggest question. How does one grow professionally or find a job given remote work, limited in-person connections, and other restrictions caused by the pandemic? I can just start, you know, with the panelists. You can introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your background that maybe, you know, isn't covered in the bio. But maybe we could start with Shabnan.
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. I'm Shabnam Kabir, and I'm a program assistant in the health unit of the International Rescue Committee. I've been in that role for about 4.5 months now. Before that, I interned for about a year with SID-W, actually, which was really great, and it really helped advance my career. I did my bachelor's degree from George Washington University in International Affairs and graduated in 2019. And then I also recently finished my master's degree from George Mason University in Global Affairs. So I'll get to the answer. I think, since the pandemic and everything becoming virtual, I think a lot of us, or at least me personally, we've had a lot more time on our hands. And I have tried to really take advantage of that extra time that we have. Simply because we don't have to commute to places. So there's a lot more free time. And like personally, from my experience, like what I personally did was I took on 2 internships during the pandemic, something that I probably would not have been able to do if we were in person, because I physically would not have been able to get from one office to the other. But because everything was virtual, it was very doable without taking on more than I can handle. But obviously that's just one example. There's many ways you can take advantage of the extra time to grow professionally. You can, enroll in an online course and get certified in project proposals or grant writing, take a course and learn a new language, perhaps practice a language that you may be forgetting. And I know everyone says this, but networking, virtual networking is not as ideal as in-person networking, but it does have its advantage. It's easier and it's quicker. You don't have to commute anywhere. You just, turn on your computer, get on Zoom and start chatting. And I think because of that, at least from my experience, people are often more willing to chat with you because it's easier, and it's also easier to fit in a 20-30 minute call into your schedule since you don't have to commute anywhere. Yeah, so in short, I think one way to grow professionally during a pandemic and job hunt is to really take advantage of that extra time you have by not commuting. Thanks.
That's great. Let's hear maybe from, let's see, how about Lila? Do you want to talk a little bit about, your background, maybe beyond what's in the bio, and if you wanted to address that initial question, and we can go to some of these other questions in a moment.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Scott. And it's really great to see so many people from all over the world calling in. And I feel like this panel is an example of all the opportunities that exist. The silver lining, like Shabnam was talking about, to the pandemic is we are able to have these virtual connections that we didn't even think about before. I'm here in Amman, Jordan. I didn't say that part. So the sun is setting here when the sun is rising where Scott is. I'm a USAID Foreign Service Officer. I started my career with the US government 16 years ago with the State Department as a civil servant. And then I joined the aid Foreign Service about 13 years ago, and I've served in Jordan, Armenia, DC, Tajikistan, Guatemala, and with state I covered sub-Saharan Africa for conflict prevention, and then also as a country coordinator for the Office of Director of US Foreign Assistance. Before that, I worked for NGOs, Mercy Corps, and Interaction. And something it doesn't say in my bio is I started with both of those as an intern. I started interning with Mercy Corps in college, and I started interning with Interaction in grad school, and then I got jobs with them. And if you talk to me for even 2 seconds, you know that I'm the biggest advocate of internships, because not only can it directly lead to a job because you're then a known quantity, but so too does it help you learn what you're interested in, what you're not interested in, how to act in a professional setting. My first internship at Mercy Corps, my supervisor had to tell me to sound less cool on the phone, so I started to practice my professional voice, which was deeper and less cool sounding. And so that's really important. And this pandemic has given you an opportunity to have virtual internships where they wouldn't have existed before. So I have an intern right now, maybe he's on, Nate, he's an Army lieutenant who's actually based here, and he's interning with the USAID mission. I've seen him once, and he's been with us for a month or two already, and he's doing really interesting things, and he's going to events for us and virtual events and attending all our meetings, and he's networking with tons of people at the embassy here in Amman, back in Washington. And so, as Shabnam was saying, that virtually you're able to access resources you wouldn't normally access. And then also remember that domestic opportunities can translate internationally. So maybe you can't fly to Amman or somewhere to do an internship or to get a job, but you can work locally, and the skills you learn there will translate. And so never think, oh, I shouldn't take this because it's not, the United Nations or my dream job. Everything is building towards you becoming a stronger, more qualified, more well-rounded professional. So never say no to an opportunity. Always take the opportunity. I'll stop there for now. I could just
Thanks, Lila. That's a pretty interesting note that you got from your supervisor. Like, you sound too cool on the phone. It's like, that's like a great interview answer. Like, what's one of your weaknesses? I sound too cool on the phone. It's like, that'd be a hard one. Asid, good to see that you connected.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah,
I'm here,
no worries. It's good to see you. Yesterday you were on the phone. So yeah, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe start addressing the first question?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. It's great to see so many people from around the world joining this. My name is Asena. I am an epidemiologist by trade, building on what Lila was saying about taking opportunities that are domestic. I started my career with the Philadelphia Department of Public Health with a focus on epidemiology. My undergrad degree was in public health. My master's was in epi and biostats. I was really interested in data use and technology. And I had done a few international development projects in undergrad and graduate school, working in Panama, Guatemala, Costa Rica. But I had a circumstance that left me unable to travel at the time when I was much younger. So I took this opportunity at the Department of Public Health during the 2009 to 2012 H1N1 pandemic, which many people may not remember, some may, but that was also a pandemic season. It was the influenza, and it was quite an interesting experience, kind of mobilizing our team with the epidemiology team. There's 7 of us there, and we did kind of a rapid response, similar to things that we're seeing today. We had to figure out how to get the vaccine out. We had to figure out how to vaccinate an entire population, work with schools when they had to shut down and things like that, back nearly 10 years ago. And then I went into an opportunity presented itself to move to India, where I worked with what was a small NGO at that time in Dharavi, which is a large urban slum in Mumbai, working on the prevention of violence against women and children. Moved to Uganda after that, working with USAID as a monitoring evaluation associate. And then coming back to India for another project on tuberculosis for a few years, and then moving to DC, where I worked for a USAID implementing partner on a health finance project, and then taking some time off to start my own company, which was its own roller coaster in Philadelphia, which is where I'm from. And then 4 years ago, coming back to Dev Results here in Washington, DC, which is a technology company, working on monitoring and evaluation with partners like USAID, the State Department, and implementing partners in our space. And all of that kind of was threaded with the needle of data use and technology from my epi days at the health department to today. That's really what I do. I look at data and I implement tools in order to streamline the change management process when adopting a technology platform, which is what we're seeing now more and more with USA Digital Strategy. There's a thing called the USA Digital Front Door Initiative that's coming out. So more and more we're moving from this interest in technology for the international development sector to now, how do we actually implement tech? It's no longer like an if, it's now, how, which is really exciting. And it's a great opportunity to think about how you can work in the sector, because it's not just the traditional implementing kind of organizations. It's now working with a lot of different partners, whether you're a technology company like myself, whether you're a donor agency like USAID, or whether you're implementing partner like one of the larger organizations. I'm sure you've heard Chemonics or Winrock, Apt Associates, where I used to work, all doing kind of the work that we're building in this ecosystem. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different opportunities, just finding that avenue that you're interested in, and then threading that needle with a singular kind of interest point, because that's what's really going to get you further along in your career. If you like one thing, or if you like something and you're really passionate about that thing, it'll keep you kind of engaged in that sector. And again, I'm a big believer of global health or international development doesn't happen over there, it happens everywhere. And going back to that work, when I was my first job as an epi, 2009, I did not think that working on the flu was so exciting. But fast forward to 2019, when COVID-19 hit and there was another pandemic, all of those skills came up, and all of those experiences were really valuable for the work that we were doing. And to the fact that, our old team, the 7 of us from 2009, was called upon to do kind of the exact same thing in Philly. Even though they had the team, they wanted us to come back to help them with everything that was going on. So that was really an interesting kind of full circle experience.
But to respond to what you're saying about the one thing and you can focus on it, I think that does work for some people, but I also think keeping your options wide and being receptive to opportunities and seeing where it's going. I started my career in international development and communications, editing a website about poverty alleviation for Mercy Corps. But I really wanted to work on technical issues, but it was my foot in the door because I learned how to write well in college. And so it was the way I could enter. And so I think not saying, well, but then I didn't get to be a technical expert, so I'm going to say no to that internship because it got me the job at Mercy Corps, which got me into grad school, which got me X, Y, and Z. And so I think that spreading your options wide, and I joined the Foreign Service as a crisis stabilization governance officer, and it's what I love, but I've also managed every single technical sector at USAID. And that's been really great too, to get that exposure. And I think that's something that's so exciting and invigorating about a career in international development, is that even when you're a technical expert like myself, you can still wear different hats and try different things. And it's important to remember that working in development is not just being a technical expert. We're technical experts, but at any NGO, USAID mission, multilateral organization, you need accountants, you need contract officers, you need human resources. And so remember that even if you're not a technical expert, or you're not yet a technical expert, that there's still opportunities. And so if you get an opportunity to, work in the financial management office at an NGO or something like that, don't say no because you want to be a public health expert or a governance expert. Say yes, because it's your foot in the door. And I think sometimes people are worried about getting typecast, but only you are going to limit yourself to being that one thing if that's how you see yourself. So throw your net wide.
No, I agree completely. And just to build on that, a good story is when I moved to Uganda to work for USAID, I made a mistake. I did not want to move to Uganda. I wanted to move to DC. And in my application for this position, there was 2. There was a DC office and there was the Kampala office. And I was in India applying for this position. So I said that I was an international resident for this position. And the Washington position was only for US citizens, which I am. I just thought in my mind, I'm in India, so I'm international. So they called me and they're like, look, you're disqualified for the Washington position, but we'll put you in Uganda. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to move to Uganda. But then I had that conversation with my family. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. What's the worst that happens? And it's, that was one of the best mistakes I've probably ever made, I would say. So I think that's spot on, saying yes, take the risk. It's fine. It'll work out. And it's exciting. You never know what's going to what it will lead to. And I'm still in contact with all my teams back in Uganda as well. So it was not only a personal win, but a professional, win as well.
Okay, Scott, we're going to let you moderate in 2 seconds, but I just want to say, he's still in touch with everyone. That's so key. You have these informational interviews, you have these internships, you meet Scott at a SID career fair. Stay in touch, make sure to send an email every 6 months, once a year, just saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. What are you doing? Because if you're in touch with someone, you never know when they're going to see an opportunity and send it your way, or if they're going to be a reference for you, or if you're going to be in touch and they're going to be like, oh, I was just talking to my friend X and they said this. But if you like contact someone out of the blue after not talking to them for like 3 years, it's going to be a little more creepy and feel like you're just using them, or they'll feel that way. So make sure to shoot off that email every now and then. Have a list of like 10, 20 professionals that you want to stay in touch with, and take that time. So I think that's really awesome that you're doing that, SID.
Yeah, that's great. I was thinking about a lot of different topics because you've all covered a lot of different things, but I wanted to touch on that aspect of like you get in however you can get in. I had 3 years or almost 4 years of experience as a recruiter for the Peace Corps. After I finished Peace Corps in Niger, I got a job in San Francisco as a Peace Corps recruiter. It's a non-traditional recruiting job. It's not like a regular recruiting job. Basically, I'm not saying no as much, but the 3 or 4 years of experience recruiting, once I was finishing with my master's degrees, it was the only way I could get any traction with a big USAID implementing partner was as a recruiter. So that's how I broke in at IRD. I got a job as a recruiter. I was very transparent with them. I was like, I will recruit for you. I'll do the best I can. But my ultimate goal is to transition to the program side. And they were cool with it. They gave me a chance. After about a year, they let me join the Iraq team. So I had noticed in recruiting for a year, looking at, all the hundreds of CVs that, especially CVs for very experienced people, everyone cuts their teeth on, or, so to speak, they get their first start in whatever the worst, humanitarian disaster is of that time. So there's a bunch of people from the 80s that, were in the Horn of Africa. There's people from the 90s that, got their start in the Balkans. You have a whole generation of development professionals that worked in Afghanistan and Iraq, now with the migration crisis and, all these other different, horrible disasters around the world, unfortunately. This is where a lot of people get their start. And so you do what you have to do. So I wanted to pivot a little bit. There's a couple of different kinds of questions here. I wanted to talk a little bit about, because it seems like the room is a lot of young professionals, but there's some like experienced people who are putting some questions in the chat or in the questions. There's this aspect you were mentioning, interning. I have seen a lot of different kinds of opportunities available to intern remotely or to intern in person. There's interning in the field. There's interning at headquarters positions. I have seen my students in particular work out where through networking, they arrange themselves an internship that's focused on, meeting the requirements of the degree, where, where they're doing a practicum that they're going to get credit for. And then they talk their way into an organization through talking with alumni or other connections that, I or the faculty can help bring. Those tend to be unpaid. And then there's paid positions and paid internships where, there's a formal requisition and the NGO or the organization has like a program where they compensate interns, things like that. There's so many different ways. I wanted to talk, maybe Shabnan, since you're a little, younger and you've been through this experience more recently, like what was your experience getting your internship? And like, was it compensated, and what were the kinds of things that you did? How did you learn and leverage these connections you made during your internships?
Yeah, I really tried to, well, in my experience, a lot of the times internships are unfortunately unpaid. It's really difficult to find paid internships. They do provide compensation at times, like for your lunch or for your commuting, but that was when things were in person. Now that everything's virtual, that doesn't really happen anymore. I think, one way I took advantage of a lot of my internships was I definitely kept in contact with all of my supervisors. And they're actually, a lot of them I would consider them my mentors now, actually. I reach out to them, when I need advice with career, and even if you don't necessarily have a question, you can just reach out to them, during the holidays, like happy holiday, how are you? Or happy birthday. Those are just simple ways to keep in touch. It doesn't always have to be career talk. You can build connections with them other ways. I personally, when I was interning, I personally had other part-time jobs, like as a waitress or, to help support myself. I know that may not always be possible, but that's an option as well. And yeah, I think the best thing to do is to really keep in contact with your supervisor, with your coworkers, build a connection with them while you're interning, but then definitely keep in contact with them after you're interning. Yeah, I think that's the main thing I did, really, just keep in contact with them and, build a connection.
Yeah, I was wondering, so Asid or Lila, you were mentioning you have an intern. How did that intern come to be working with you? And, what are, like, because you work for USAID, getting an internship with USAID is not as simple as, getting an internship maybe in the private sector. Like, what was that process like? And what are your expectations for this intern?
Yeah, so he's actually on the line. Nate is on the line. He's still here in Amman. And so this one was a little unique because he's in the Army and there's an Army connection with USAID. But USAID does have internships, and they have virtual internships, and they have internships in Washington. And so, obviously with the last 2 years, things have been a little more challenging, but there's still virtual internship opportunities. And part of it is also knowing someone. I mean, Nate knew this other Army guy who, I'm the CivMil coordinator here at the mission. And so I worked with this other guy. So he reached out to me. So I said, sure, of course, I'll help your friend. And so much of the world going around are interpersonal connections and just making that connection. And so even if there's not a formal internship program or something, knowing someone who's willing to like host you or something, it's a little more complicated with the government getting on our systems and, that sort of thing. But virtually, if you're just like, if you don't need to be on the system necessarily or that sort of thing, it makes it easier. So I always tell everyone, from my children to my colleagues to, other professionals, always ask, because the worst you're going to get is a no. So ask for the internship. That's how I got my first internship at Mercy Corps when I was in college. I just kept calling and calling until they, you want to do it diplomatically, so you're not like harassing them, but ask if you can do an internship. I interned with Mercy Corps again in grad school in Indonesia, and I just cold called them and said, hey, I want to do an international internship. Where can I do it? And it was a great opportunity. I worked also at a restaurant, Shabnam, to intern in college, and then for grad school, I took out some private loans to pay my way. I mean, ideally, you would have it where they are paid, but unfortunately, they're not always paid. But even now, there are still organizations who are hosting interns. And so, find a country you want to go to, do an internet search for organizations there and cold contact them, especially if you can either work and save up money or take out loans to pay your own way. Just having strong English skills or writing skills can really go a long way. And then what you were saying about mentorship, find mentors. It can be either supervisors or internships, or I'm in several mentorship programs, either through my grad school or through the Women in International Affairs Network, and finding a mentor who can look at your CV and cover letter, send you job openings when they see it. Mentors can go a long way. And then also fellowships, that they're great and they're amazing opportunities. Fulbright, or I joined the State Department as the Presidential Management Fellow out of grad school. We oftentimes think of internships, and internships are a great avenue, but fellowships can be also. And the internet is your friend. So go online.
That's great. I wanted to shift a little bit, because I've been noticing there's actually a lot of questions about mid-career people and people maybe breaking in that have a lot of transferable skills, but maybe not, that initial skill. I know from my recruiting experience, it's much easier for a candidate to get traction if they've literally done the exact same job at another NGO. And it just makes it really hard for someone to break into this world. And I see with I've noticed you've been kind of going, between a couple of worlds with your work, in the private sector a little bit. And I would imagine you've worked with a lot of people that are, kind of in both worlds, in the international development side, but then also sort of the private sector working on other things with transferable skills. Would you be able to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the things that I was always interested in is working in, like, I had a lot of experience working in the international development space, but I had very limited experience in private sector in the sense of like starting a company or working in the tech field, working with a startup. And I remember being at Apt and I was like really thinking like, okay, what's next? Our project was ending. The team was great, but I wanted to move on. And I looked at a few different startups in the tech space, working in the international development sector, trying to solve a few different problems. And a few of those organizations were like, oh, your background's very interesting, but like, you don't have an MBA or you don't have like this experience. And I was like, well, all right, fine. Let me apply to an MBA program, applied to a few MBA programs. I got into those programs and then I saw how much those programs cost. And I was like, no, not going to happen. So then I started my own company. I tried it. I just, it was something I was interested in. I gave me the opportunity to go home back to Philly with family. Started it but it's very quickly obvious that it wasn't going to become that like multi-million-dollar company that I was envisioning. So I just shut it down. But that gave me, it was 6 months. And that gave me like all the experience that I ever needed. And then I was, going back to what Lila was saying about asking, I got introduced to Dev Results and this current company because someone posted something on LinkedIn that I like didn't really, I thought it was like, well, I think there might be a different way to do this. So I just posted on it and we had a conversation on LinkedIn. Then the person who I was talking to was working at Dev Results at the time. He's like, why don't you call me? That phone call was on a Sunday. On Monday, he said, why don't you drive from Philly to DC? It's not that far. Let's have a conversation. By Tuesday morning, he had offered me the job. I was probably like, we were single digits at the time. The company was very small. So I was probably 4 or 5 in terms of the, employee number. But it happened that fast. So I'm a big believer of asking. I'm an adjunct professor at GW at the Elliott School. Elliott School for International Affairs, where I designed a course on digital development. That happened because I literally was up at 3 a.m. writing a proposal. And I was like, why don't I have an intern? Why don't I have someone who could help me right now at 3 a.m.? I'm so tired. And I emailed the dean at GW and I was like, you need to have a course on digital development or ICT for D. And I like listed it out. I gave him like an outline of the curriculum. And by 8 in the morning, the next day I went in to GW. He had emailed me back and he said, can you come to my office to talk about this? And I was like, sure. And I had no intention of teaching. I'm not like a professor. I guess I am now, but I wasn't. And I even said it, I designed the course for him and I gave it to him, to the school. And I was like, I'm sure there's like great people to teach this. And like 3 days later, he had already like created the syllabus and the name and everything. And my name was there. And I was like, oh no, there's a miscommunication here. Like, I'm not going to teach you this. And then they're like, no, you are. And that was 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago. So I'm a big believer of asking. I do. And from your intern days all the way to today, like I've always been very eager to ask. And I go on LinkedIn every day and I send a message to a random person that's interesting to me every day. It's like a religious habit. And it's led me to really great things throughout my career. So I highly recommend that for everyone that's on. People want to help, people want to listen, people want to give advice, people want to be there, particularly if there is opportunities to be given.
Right. Oh, please, yeah, Shabnam,
sorry, I just wanted to emphasize as well, like it's really important to ask. There's no harm in asking. And even if there is like no internships, you can always ask, I mean, the person that you're chatting with or having an informational interview with, you can always ask them if there's anything that they're working on that you could potentially help them with. And this could be anything from, helping with fundraising or even grant writing or project proposals. And if they still say no, at least you've made it known that you're open to helping. And if they say yes, then it's great because you get a potential volunteer opportunity and they get help.
That's great. We've been noticing that there appear to be a lot of Afghan refugees and other, people who are maybe coming from the field to the United States to work in headquarters positions. Maybe Lila, maybe would you be able to address that? You probably saw the question in the chat.
Oh, no, I did. What was the question? No, sorry.
Julie posted it. We were saying, we have a lot of Afghan refugees at the career fair in partnership with LIRS. One of their comments, and I've been noticing this in the chat too, a number of today's participants may be recently arrived Afghans mid-career preoccupied with settling their families as well as finding jobs. Any advice for them?
Yeah, that is so challenging, and my heart goes out to you. I hope that you've been met with kindness and respect from every American that you come across, because as you well know, America is a country made up of immigrants, and so you're welcome in that country, and you are part of the fabric now. And so it can be really challenging because there might be, at USAID there are citizenship requirements, at least I know for the Foreign Service. I'm not sure about working domestically, but your experience really does translate. And whether you were a doctor in your home country or you worked on development, you can translate that just as much as we were talking about someone else working on domestic issues or a SID who worked on domestic issues and translating it. So too does your experience. Being able to write and speak professionally are both really important. And so if you haven't done English language classes, get out there and do them. I know that in DC, there's so many like meetup groups where you can practice your English, and maybe someone's learning your language and you can have that exchange. But having very strong English language skills is going to go a long way. And at the same time, if you find an organization that's working with the population from where you came from, your native English or your native language skills can really play into what makes you a unique candidate. And, Scott can talk to this as a recruiter, but I think a lot of people read job descriptions and they think, oh, I don't have all of that, and so I shouldn't apply for it. But that's not true. You should apply for all the jobs, all of them, because you never know when you're going to be the most qualified candidate. I was talking to a recruiter once and they said, we never get CVs that hit everything perfectly, but you might have more experience than the next person, or you might interview better, because so much of it at the end of the day comes down to like, how do you click with that, with the people interviewing you, and you might click better. And so my advice for anyone is to send out tons and tons of job applications. Make sure to have at least 2 people that you trust read your resume. Keep it short. I've been doing this for over 20 years and my resume is still 2 pages. Having looked at hundreds of resumes, I get so angry when they're like longer. It's like, summarize, people, like you don't have to say everything you did. Keep it short, keep it simple. Have a really well-written cover letter, and have that cover letter written where you can plug out a couple sentences, and then, because you want to change the sentences to prove that you know what job you're applying for and that you know about the organization. So take half an hour, do research about the organization, plug in those 2 lines, and then send it out. But you should just have like a really strong skeleton, and then just apply to 100 jobs, because of that, you'll probably get something. And so my plug is I wrote a book called Global: An Extraordinary Guide for Ordinary Heroes, because I think that our line of work is the coolest, and I wanted to explain it in an accessible, straightforward way to get people interested and empowered to join this line of work. And the first annex has like page after page after page of job sites, fellowship sites. So get my book, go to Annex 1 and just go to every one of them. And even if the job doesn't sound like your dream job, still apply if you think you have some relevant experience, because there's no point in getting a job that you're 100% qualified for, because then you will never learn. The mission director of my mission here, who's like the most senior you can get, she gives the advice, if you're not scared in your job every day, you're in the wrong job. Like, you need to be challenging yourself. And so aim for the sky, like go out and apply for every job. Obviously not a job that requires 20 years of experience if you only have 1, but stretch it, because you never know. So throw the net very wide. Thanks.
That's great. I agree totally. There's a thing, they've done studies across the genders where, you know, men will apply to jobs when they're, you know, like 50 to 60% qualified, and where women will only apply for jobs when they're close to like 95, 99%.
It's so true. It's so true, Scott. Yeah. Totally.
And so, yeah, it's, you have to push through it. A lot of hiring is really based on fit, especially in international development, and especially in like, and even small, like a small organization where you're going to be working with, you know, a very small team, or, you know, in a remote place where, you know, you're going to be working with a few people. Being a good fit is a lot. I mean, it's hard to prove. I mean, how do you prepare for that? I mean, basically, you have to be the kind of worker that people want to have around. You are an agreeable person. You're an adaptable person. You have skills that complement the team. Sometimes you can dig that information out by doing a lot of research, like where you look up who's posted somewhere or who's on what team. You can get that information by networking, by informational interviewing. You can reach out and start making these connections where you have, you know, like a 20-minute, or, you know, you ask for 20 minutes, you always get 30, but, you know, you ask for 20 minutes, you know, on a Zoom call or a phone call, or even getting coffee with somebody. And you just talk about their organization and what the work is like. And if they know about a particular job that you're interested in applying to, if they're not involved in the hiring, they, you know, most people are able to talk about the work they're doing and the team and what they know about that team. So that's a great way to, yeah, go ahead, please.
But the good fit thing is, it goes both ways. Like, are you a good fit for them? But remember, even when you're desperate for a job, you don't want to work in a toxic environment or with a toxic manager. And so when you're interviewing or informational interviewing, make sure that not only is the organizational culture, but so too the culture of the team you'll be directly working with is a good fit for you, because you deserve to be in a healthy, normal work environment. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. I noticed my old colleague Pablo's on here. Hi, Pablo. Yeah, he was just saying it's important to complement the team, not necessarily fit with the team. I agree. You know, you got to get work done. That's probably the biggest thing. But let's see. I wanted to talk a little bit about, because we have about, oh, we're really close to the end here. I guess, you know, since we're at the last 5 minutes, we should probably start kind of wrapping up here. I wanted to address, you know, because we're in this new era where, you know, there's remote work, there's remote networking, there's remote positions, everyone's sitting on their computer. There's a lot more things available to all of us to build our skills remotely. And I'm wondering, what can one do to grow and build skills virtually? And then, you know, leverage that for work. Maybe, Shabnam, have you had any good experience with this recently?
I think I briefly mentioned this at the very beginning, you know, the extra time that we've had, like due to not commuting, I've really tried to take advantage of that by like learning a new language, or perhaps enrolling in an online course and getting certified in something. I think, yeah, you know, in this virtual world now, I think that's the best way, you know, just building your skills virtually by either through a course or I guess networking with people. Again, I know everyone always says it, but through networking and getting advice on like what kind of skills you need, or if you want to take a certain career path, what kind of skills you should gain, what languages, like if you want to focus on a certain region, if you should learn a certain language, and yeah, stuff like that.
Lila or Asi, do you want to address that?
Well, you know, you had also asked about mid-level transfers, and part of that, you know, I was thinking like doing a 1-year program or a 6-month certificate. Now with the virtual world we're living in, it's an opportunity, even if you're not living where that university is, and that's a good way to pivot. 1, because then you have it on your resume, but 2, then you're making connections in that line of work. And so you know, I've regressed sometimes in my career, where I was a mid-level civil servant at the State Department, and then I joined AID as a junior officer. And it's okay to regress. It can hurt. Like, I work with this amazing woman who worked for CDC for 15 years, and she was like a senior civil servant, and she quit to become a junior officer. at AID. And so just remember that if you're pretty far along on your career, it's okay to take a step back or a step to the side, because no career is completely linear, and it will pay off in the long run if you're doing what you really love. And so, you know, it hurts the ego a little, or even when I interned for Mercy Corps in Indonesia during grad school, after working for them before grad school, that hurt to then go be an unpaid intern, but it's worth it. And so just remember that you're investing in your future, and you have to trust your instinct. I mean, if it seems like, oh, this is crazy that I'm quitting my job to take an entry-level position, trust your instinct and trust in yourself, and know that it will work out. We have all been there where we started. Oh, I did just see Love Lila's cool voice. Yeah, let me tell you. We've all been there where we started, and
Future
it's
radio
so
DJ.
it seems so insurmountable. But then you look back, like here I am 20 years into my career. Like, how does that happen? And as Asid said, people want to help each other. And so reach out to people. Julie gave me this great suggestion to give advice to people about reverse engineering on LinkedIn. Go find someone whose job seems amazing on LinkedIn, and then see how they got there, see what jobs they had, see who's in their universe, see what grad school they went to, because you do have to go to grad school. I always say you don't need a master's degree to do this line of work, but you need it to get into this line of work. And then when you have informational interviews, ask who you can talk to from them. Say, thank you so much for talking to me. Do you have anyone else you suggest I talk to? Because that's how you really grow your network.
Exactly. Asid, do you got any closing?
Yeah, I mean, everyone kind of said exactly what I'm thinking, but I think one thing I want to leave with is something that was said too, was stay in contact. Lila, I think you were mentioning, stay in contact with people as you go through your career journey, as you go through your personal journey. Let people know. I talked to my first semester student, the first semester I ever taught those students, and I love hearing from them. I love like getting a, I'm not saying send a letter or anything, just send a text or send a one-line email. Hey, got a job here, or like, hey, doing this thing, because it will pay off in the end. It will help if you reach out 10 years later and you're still in contact with people. You know, the world in the sector that we're in is very small. It's getting smaller, particularly now with the digital kind of Zoom life that so stay in contact, stay connected, reach out to as many people as you need to. Don't forget about them when you do get that meeting, or you do get that informational interview, or you do take a class whose teacher was really relevant to the work that you're doing. People like that.
That's great. This has been really cool experience. I think we've got a great day ahead of us here. I think you know, there's been a ton of really interesting questions in the chat, both in the Q&A thing and in the actual chat. For any of the questions that we haven't been able to answer today, I think you'll have a lot of opportunities to interact with a variety of recruiters and other, you know, professionals that work for all of the various presenters at the various tables that are at the fair today. So feel free to start asking those questions when you start getting in front of other recruiters, like, you know, Pablo and others that are in here that are going to be exhibiting. I'm also with my colleagues. The Middlebury Institute will have a table, so if you're interested in visiting our you know, table, we'll have some recruiters there to answer questions about our graduate programs. So yeah, up next there'll be a short break here, but the virtual exhibit hall on the Brazen platform will be open shortly. The exhibit hours are from 11:15 to 3:45 p.m. Eastern. Make sure your profile's up to date. If you have any questions, you can email the career fair at sidw.org. The platform has a lot of functionality, so you know, feel free to go in there and explore. But I really appreciate this opportunity to moderate this panel. Thank you to Julie and the team at SIDW for supporting it, and thank you very much to Lila, Shabnan, and Asid for talking with me today. Thank you very much, and have a great day.